Coming up on Locked On Dodgers, the Dodgers beat the Brewers in a bounce-back game despite having an impromptu bullpen game because of an injury to Noah Syndergaard's finger. We're going to talk a lot about the Dodgers win, the offense stepping up, what Syndergaard's injury could mean for the Dodgers, and then what the bullpen could look like in the near future as people start coming back from paternity and other things. And that's what's on tap, so let's get Locked On Dodgers.
You are Locked On Dodgers, your daily Los Angeles Dodgers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, Dodger fans, this is Locked On Dodgers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen every weekday morning. Remember, this show is free and available on all podcast platforms and on YouTube simply by searching for Locked On Dodgers. Or even better, go ahead and subscribe wherever you're watching or listening right now, and then you become an everydayer just like we are. If this is your first time with us, I am Jeff Snider. That guy next to me is Vince Samperio. Vince and I are both lifelong Dodger fans just like you are. We've also both spent time covering the Dodgers in the press box and the locker room, so we're not quite insiders, but we bring you the smart fans perspective on our boys in blue every weekday morning. This episode is brought to you by eBay Motors. A championship team is about each player being a perfect fit. Same with your vehicle. So for parts that fit, head to eBay Motors and look for the green check. Stay in the game with eBay Guaranteed Fit, ebaymotors.com. Let's ride. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. And Vince, it was a weird game. We came into Tuesday's game hoping the Dodgers could hit Eric Lauer, hoping Noah Syndergaard could pitch well for the first time in a while. And we got one of our wishes. And I guess Syndergaard didn't pitch poorly. So depending on how we worded that wish, we may have gotten both of our wishes. Dodgers got to Eric Lauer, scored 4 runs in 3+ innings off him. Noah Syndergaard, though, was kind of the story of the game. He pitched 1 inning, didn't pitch extremely well, but 1 scoreless inning. And then he was done because of either a cut or a blister on his finger, depending on who you believe.
Yeah, not ideal for the Dodgers in terms of a lot of different things, especially coming off, we talked about Syndergaard in yesterday's episode about how he's looking to find ways to get over mental hurdles. This isn't a mental one. This was a physical one that he couldn't get over, but still it's not going to necessarily help with the mental part of it either. The bright side, though, Dodgers offense put up runs. The bullpen was able to hold it down. And now, as they've done a lot of times in his career, the Dodgers look to claim Kershaw to give him some length in the game tomorrow or today now. But yeah, I mean, Syndergaard, it didn't look that great in the first inning. So who knows how much that finger affected him. And if it did, who knows how well he would have pitched the rest of the way anyways. Shout out to Chris Taylor, who loves the left field grass in Milwaukee. I don't know what it is out there, but yeah, it was all in all good for the Dodgers, but yeah, not great for Syndergaard.
Yeah, and I said Syndergaard was a story. Really, the bullpen was the story, or at least, the offense. We'll definitely talk about the offense in a second too. But the bullpen throwing 8 innings in a game when they had already been worked somewhat hard the day before because, I think they had to throw 3 or 4 innings the day before. I guess it was just 3 because the Brewers didn't have to bat in the 9th inning. But still, and they hadn't pitched very well the day before. But in this game, they pitched 8 innings, just 2 runs, 2 solo home runs that Shelby Miller allowed. And even that, it's like you're up 6-0. You honestly, even though home runs count for runs, you'd rather have 2 solo home runs than some walks in that situation because you want your pitchers pounding the zone in a situation where, worst case scenario, he hits a solo home run. And Rowdy Tellez is going to do that sometimes. Victor Caratini, maybe less understandable, but, a couple bad pitches. Other than that, though, 2 bad pitches in 8 innings, we will take that in an impromptu bullpen game that, all in all, you couldn't have asked for more from the bullpen in this game.
Yeah, exactly. And almost, I think everyone other than Bickford and Suero pitched who pitched the day before. So again, the Dodgers are going to need that length out of Kershaw today. But you go to the offense and it started off with Mookie Betts. Mookie Betts did his first little video podcast with my day job, Bleach Report. Then he hit a home run. So hopefully he does more episodes and we get some more home runs out of it. But his home run was good, but the really impressive one was Miguel Vargas because that ball went off the back wall of out there in Milwaukee. Not a ball you see hit that far very often.
Yeah, and Vargas in his previous at bat had hit one that looked like a routine flyout off the bat, and then ended up going to the wall. Tyrone Taylor, is that his name? Tyrone Taylor,
Yeah.
I think. He ended up having to make a pretty nice catch to make the play. It's just that sneaky power from Vargas. Is like the roof was closed. It's not like it got caught up in the jet stream or anything. He just hits the ball harder than it looks like he does sometimes. And
He's probably got some backspin on it because he hits a lot to left field that just carry. And
yeah,
even the game we were at, the first ball that almost went out didn't look anything close to a home run, and even the second one a little bit better, but it wasn't like a, oh my god, home run.
Yeah. That day game last Wednesday, after that fly out, my brother and I said to each other, man, if he swung all the way, he might have hit that out. And then he did the next time up. By the way, Bickford did pitch in this game. He was the first one out of the bullpen. I think you were on an airplane at the time, so
I missed
you
him.
can be forgiven for that. Yeah, he actually pitched well. It was a good bounce back. And he said after the game, he, as a competitor, he was very happy to get the opportunity to jump back right in the next day. And he pitched really well. Justin Brule got the win because he pitched better. And in that situation, as we talked about last week, it's up to the official scorer if he gets to choose whoever he thought pitched the best. And Justin Brule was probably the best. Brule looked really, really good. And maybe we won't get into Brule too much because, and maybe not Bickford either, because we're going to talk more about Bickford and Brule in the third segment today. But yeah, Mookie Betts getting that home run off Eric Lauer. Lauer he's not a bad pitcher, but he's not a good pitcher, except when he faces the Dodgers. And I do think some of that has been overblown just because a lot of Lauer's success against the Dodgers is from when he was on the Padres several years ago. And so, teams change and there's nothing magical about Lauer pitching to guys in the Dodgers uniform. But the fact is the Dodgers have not hit lefties very well this year. And Mookie setting the tone by hitting that home run, and then Freddie getting on base, stealing a base, working, getting 2 runs in the first inning off Eric Lauer, really, I guess, set the tone. I know I said that twice already, but that's kind of the only phrase for it. It set the tone for the offense, and the offense just never really let up.
Yeah, and with the Brewers, their starting pitching is really good. They got Devin Williams in the later part of the game. But there's not really a ton of relievers in the middle of the part of that game that you're like, oh my God, this guy, I'm scared of this guy. And that's where the Dodgers need to get into that bullpen early. And, they got 2 runs off the bullpen, not a ton, but the fact of the matter was that they got to it. They set themselves up to win the series on Wednesday. You look at it in the grand scheme of the series, and yeah, the Dodgers had to use all their bullpen arms, but that was not out of the need for it. It was out of the need, but not the need because of bad pitching. It was the need because of injury. But the Dodgers, set themselves up well when you're not facing Burns and you go after a different guy. So it looks good on the Dodgers end offensively. They had a chance for some more runs later in the game. And we talk about the Dodgers offense, boomer bust and everything else. And the fact of the matter is, like, they put guys on base and they don't always hit them in, but it's nice to see them continue to put guys on base into later part of the game, even when the game's not quite out of hand, but out of hand enough to where they're comfortable. And they were one swing away from just really breaking that open, but it didn't happen, and they still won anyways.
Yeah, and today Dodgers play a day game against the Brewers to wrap up this series. I think it's what do we decide? 10:40 a.m. LA start, and they'll be facing another lefty who. I know Wade Miley has decent numbers this year. I have a hard time believing that Wade Miley is a good pitcher simply because I have 15 years worth of data saying, he's all right. 13 years worth of data, 4.09 ERA. It's kind of funny. He still doesn't strike anybody out. I'm looking at his season numbers this year. He has a 2.31 ERA, but he has a 5.4 strikeouts per 9, which is the lowest of his career. He also has a 1.5 walks per 9, which is by far the lowest of his career, less than half his regular rate. So that's going to be interesting to see a team like the Dodgers, who are good at taking walks, against a pitcher who has walked a lot fewer than usual this year. I'm hoping the Dodgers can get to Miley again. Adrian Gonzalez was saying on the postgame show that day games in Milwaukee, even with the roof closed, the sun coming in through the window, it can be really hard on hitters. And so he's expecting more of a pitcher's duel. But it sure would be nice to see the Dodgers get to another lefty early.
Yeah, especially Wade Miley. He's one of those where it's super annoying when he does well against your team.
Yeah, for sure. We're going to come back in a minute. We're going to talk more about Syndergaard's injury and what it means for the roster in the short term and the long term. So thank you for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen every weekday morning, and please keep it Locked On Dodgers. This episode is brought to you by Sorare. Our new sponsor, Sorare, is a revolutionary fantasy baseball game and marketplace transforming fans into owners with officially licensed digital cards featuring players from across all 30 MLB teams. And unlike other fantasy baseball platforms, Sorare managers truly own their own fantasy experience, collecting, buying, selling, and competing with player cards against global opponents to win epic rewards. What are some of those epic rewards? I'll tell you. Sorare MLB game weeks happen twice weekly and span a 3 to 4 day cycle. At the end of game weeks, Sorare MLB managers who rank at or near the top of their leaderboards win a variety of rewards, which can include Sorare scarcity cards, game tickets to actual Major League Baseball games, merchandise, signed jerseys, and VIP experiences like meeting MLB stars. Prizes may vary depending on the competition. It's a great way to really dig into fantasy baseball in a unique way that is a lot of fun and can have some pretty cool rewards. So head to sorare.com/lockedon. That's SORARE.com/lockedon to draft your team of free player cards, set your lineup, and start competing today to win epic rewards. Again, that's sorare.com/lockedon to start playing today. All right, we are back. We want to thank you for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen every weekday morning. If you are watching on YouTube, we'd love to hear your thoughts in the YouTube comment section. If you're listening on the podcast, we'd love to hear from you through email or social media or whatever. We'll give you all that contact info at the end like we always do. Also want to remind you, today's game, like I said, it's a 10:40 a.m. start LA time, which means you might be stuck at work or otherwise unable to plop yourself in front of the TV and watch the game. And in that case, SiriusXM is here for you. You can listen to the hometown broadcast live as it's happening just by listening on SiriusXM, or pull out the SXM app and search for Dodgers. If you are in your car and want to listen to it on your SiriusXM radio, it'll be on channel 178 on Wednesday. But otherwise, either way, SiriusXM is there for you. And you can also listen to this podcast on SiriusXM on the SXM app just by searching for Locked On Dodgers. So Syndergaard, as we talked about, he left the game after one inning. I guess it does matter in the long run whether it was a blister or a cut. I think a cut maybe might heal more quickly, but Syndergaard did say after the game he's been dealing with this for like a week and a half or so, and maybe even a little bit longer. And so if it hasn't healed yet and it's to the point where it's really bleeding, Dave Roberts wasn't ready to commit after the game to saying this is an IL stint. He said, we'll know more in the next couple days. Got to give Noah and the training staff a chance to get this figured out. But just for logistics, it seems like they might need to make a decision on the IL sooner than that, simply because they did use 7 of their 8 relievers on Tuesday. And, you know, as good as we expect Clayton Kershaw to be today, I don't think anybody's necessarily expecting a complete game from him. And so, and with it being a morning game or early afternoon in Milwaukee, this is a decision that the Dodgers have probably already made by the time we're recording this, Vince, at 9 p.m. on Tuesday night, California time. Chances are they've already decided. And the options are somewhat limited because guys on the 40-man roster, pitchers who are not in the big leagues right now, you got Gavin Stone, who's a starter, and he started for Oklahoma City on Tuesday. And then you've got Alex Vesia and Andre Jackson. Both of those guys last pitched on Sunday. Vesia pitched 1 inning. Jackson pitched 2 innings. Vesia, we mentioned last week his terrible first start in first appearance in AAA. The second one went much better. He faced 3 batters and struck out all 3 of them. Not sure that he's ready to come back to the big leagues yet. And then the other, I promise I'll let you talk in a second, Vince. But the other thing here, the tricky part is Stone just got sent to the minors about 5 or 6 days ago. And being sent to the minors, you have to be down there for at least 15 days as a pitcher, unless it's in case of an injury. Well, Syndergaard going in on the IL would make it possible for the Dodgers to recall Gavin Stone. But because he pitched in AAA on Tuesday, that doesn't help anybody. And so if the Dodgers need to add a pitcher for coverage for today's game, that kind of makes it harder to call up Gavin Stone to replace Syndergaard in the rotation for his next time through.
Yeah, I think the easiest thing is just get Syndergaard on the IL and worry about it later. Like, he already got a start skipped, and this, if he was dealing with it already, it's still flared up. So realistically, whatever it is, give him 2 weeks off. It's not like it's not like the Dodgers need him. He's not pitching ridiculously well. So put him on the IL. Then, like I said, they've already figured this out, but for us to kind of figure it out right now, and then you decide, do you need the arm or do you want Stone, or do you bring up an arm and then kind of have a back pocket IL for somebody? We know the Dodgers like to, make their way with the wording and everything else around of everything roster construction. So realistically, what I'm thinking is they IL Syndergaard tomorrow, they call up a pitcher, and then there's a backdoor IL stint coming for somebody next week when they need Stone to come up and pitch. But they're off on Thursday too, right? So I guess technically would it need a starter the next time around if they don't want to. So it could work out that way too.
So maybe Andrew Friedman made a call to Andre Jackson tonight and said, "Hey, Andre, AAA money sucks, right? Well, here's a way for you to get some big league money. We're going to call you up, and then in 4 days, your tricep is going to be a little bit tender, and you're going to get major league pay while you're sitting on the major league injured list for a couple of weeks." It could be something like that. And one of the things we talk about a lot on this podcast is that there's always injuries available. If you need somebody to be injured, doesn't even have to be a phantom IL stint, whether it's, one of your relievers probably isn't feeling 100% right now. And you tell him, okay, and it could be as easy as, "Hey, Wander Suero, you're lucky to be on the roster at all. So you're hurt now. Okay. But yeah, injuries are always there. And so I think that's probably right. It's hard to see them just skipping that spot in the rotation this time through, because they are trying to give everybody as much rest as possible, even with the day off. And it's already, originally when the Dodgers set up the rotation, it seemed like the plan was for Stone to make 2 starts so that the Dodgers could have the same 3 pitchers against San Diego this weekend that they did last weekend. And that those plans changed when they sent Stone down. But it's one of those things that it's so easy to just think that being a general manager and a manager is just the basic stuff. But these roster decisions, I think this is kind of where these guys really make their money.
Yeah. And I mean, it's fun for us to speculate in, the phantom IL and all this other stuff, blah, blah. But, we're just saying that because we can't, we're not actually doing it. They're the ones that actually have to go out and do it and, deal with anything that comes from it. So, yeah, it is a lot harder than it is. But, yeah, we'll see what happens. The other part, too, is, Caleb Ferguson is on the paternity list. So I don't know how long he's going to be. If he comes back tomorrow, then that's an arm. And then in theory, we'll talk about, kind of Phil Bickford and Syndergaard type of deal. So there's other ways they may be able to manipulate it if Ferguson comes back, which usually I don't think it'll just be a 1-day thing. But yeah, we'll like I said, it's already worked out. There's somebody on a plane either to Milwaukee already, whether it's Ferguson or Jackson or Vesia, and they'll be there pitching tomorrow after Kershaw goes.
Yeah. Yeah, and we are going to talk more about that in just a second, about who might be the move when Ferguson does come back from the paternity list. So we'll jump into that in a second, right after I remind you again that SiriusXM has you covered. If you can't be in front of the TV to watch the Dodger game today at 10:40 a.m. Pacific time, you can just pull it up on your SiriusXM radio in your car, channel 178, or on the SXM app, search for Dodgers, and you can listen to the hometown broadcast. It's a lot of fun listening to it. And I actually listened to the first inning of, I heard Mookie's home run on the radio because I was driving my son home from baseball practice. And Tim Neverett and Rick Bundy did a really good job in calling that one. It's exciting to hear a home run on the radio. It always reminds me a little bit. I always think back to 2018 NLCS Game 2, Justin Turner's home run off Jeremy Jeffress. I was in my car driving down to California to go to games 3, 4, and 5. And I remember exactly where I was on the freeway and how tightly I was gripping the steering wheel and how excited my daughter and I were. So listening on the radio is a fun way to do it sometimes. And by the radio, sometimes I mean the SXM app. So just do that, search for Dodgers. All right, Vince, let's talk a little bit. Caleb Ferguson is going to come back. Obviously, he's been one of the Dodgers' top relievers. His spot is there. Justin Brule is the guy who got called up when Ferguson went on the paternity list. Brule has been great in the minor leagues this year, and he has been great so far since he came back. Justin Brule seems like he belongs in the big league bullpen. And I know some of it's just the nature of being a guy with options that sometimes you do get sent down, whether you deserve to or not. A guy without options is Phil Bickford. And Bickford did pitch really well on Tuesday in a nice bounce back game. But he had to bounce back because he didn't pitch well at all in the previous game. And overall on the season, he hasn't pitched very well this year. And it's hard because Bickford doesn't have options. And so to get him off the big league roster would mean most likely losing him out of your organization because somebody would claim him on waivers. He has good enough stuff. He's had enough success with the Dodgers that he's probably not going to clear waivers, which means he probably leaves the organization. And I don't know, it's hard to see the Dodgers being willing to bite that bullet at this point.
Yeah, that's the reality of this situation is that he doesn't have options. They've kept him along this far already. I don't think they're gonna, lose him off, potentially lose him off the roster over a paternity list. Bringing someone back off the paternity list, and for Justin Brule, Justin Brule's pitched well, but he's not by any means a dominant reliever. He's just a reliever that's pitched pretty well. He's not, lefty throwing 100 miles an hour with sink. He's just a good, solid reliever. The other part, is that, before it'd be like, okay, they'd have Gonzalez and then they'd have Ferguson and then now Brule, 3 lefties. And you think, oh, that's a lot of lefties. But, realistically, these guys are not facing only lefties now, and they're still performing pretty well. So that wouldn't matter too much. But I do think the conversation is there for a guy like Brule to be on the roster over Bickford in general anyways. And just for the simple fact, it would, we know what Phil Bickford is at this point. He's good sometimes. He's not good the rest of the time. Justin Brule, we're still not entirely sure. I mean, he 2021, 21, he had 21 outings, pretty solid reliever. 2022 struggled a little bit last year, gave up more hits than normal. Then this year so far has been good so far. And, that's a guy that could help out the Dodgers. Bickford's a guy that's there as the last guy out of the bullpen right now and kind of filling in wherever they need him. He can come in with bases loaded, nobody out, and get out of it, or he can come in with bases loaded, nobody out, and walk a guy and then, give up a double. You just don't know what you're going to get. And I do think once Ferguson's back, and if some of these other guys start getting healthy, here we go, pushing into May, June, you got to think do we need Bickford for the next, if we lose him, we're only going to lose him for maybe a month before these other guys start coming back anyways.
Yeah. Of course, the other guy who, the elephant in the room is named Wander Suero, who does have one option left, according to Fangraphs anyway. Seems weird. He's been in the big leagues so long, but he only has just over 3 years of service time, and he still has an option left and hasn't pitched well in his 2 appearances with the Dodgers. So realistically, even though he's the only guy who is currently fresh, Suero going back to the minor leagues is probably the answer. And realistically, Suero being DFA'd when they need 40-man roster spots as guys come back from the 60-day IL is also probably a somewhat large possibility.
Yeah, that's also very much there. The other guy that, Adam Kolarik's still down there, and he's pitching pretty well for OKC. I don't know if he'll ever get a look up here, but the Dodgers are collecting arms, and realistically, Bickford's probably, unless injuries, which is just how Bickford's still here in the first place anyways, barring, injuries, and he's not going to last the rest of the season on the team.
Yeah, or unless he does turn things around. He has shown glimpses, and and I think we spent the last half of last season saying, well, Bickford should be DFA'd any day now, and it never did happen. And like you said, some of that was situational. He kept getting saved by other guys getting hurt or whatever. But the guy's got 9 lives, maybe he and Tony Gonsolin are buddies or something. Kolarek is an interesting option, but he would require a 40-man roster move because he's not on the 40-man roster, and he's I haven't looked at his minor league splits. I assume they're mostly deploying him against left-handed batters. He has been a split heavy guy for most of his career. He's got that funky left-handed delivery that I think righties see him a lot better. And with Ferguson and Victor Gonzalez and Justin Brule, and I don't know that they necessarily would want to use a 40-man roster spot on Kolarek, but I could be wrong about that. I didn't know if you were looking up Kolarek stats. It looked like you were doing a little research there.
I was looking it up, but I didn't get there yet.
All right, that's all right. And so it will be interesting to see. Obviously, the hope for today's game is that Clayton Kershaw can go 7 innings. And Evan Phillips only had to throw a handful of pitches. I would say would have liked to not use him, but Phillips didn't pitch on Monday, and they have the off day tomorrow. But Phillips has pitched 3 of the last 4 days, and so he only threw a handful of pitches. But I think in their perfect world, they would score a lot of runs off Wade Miley, and Wander Suero could pitch the last 2 or 3 innings after Kershaw is done, just to give the rest of the bullpen a rest, because they did, they've had to use them a lot more than they planned. I think going into Monday with Gonsolin going, and then you expect 6 innings from Gonsolin and at least 5 from Syndergaard, and instead you got a total of 6 innings between those two guys. So bullpen has been worked hard, and Kershaw, like you said earlier, it's a role that they've looked to Kershaw to fill a lot of times in his career. Kershaw has very rarely had 2 bad starts in a row, and so he's going to come in motivated to bounce back from his lousy start against the Padres, and things could be lining up for Kershaw to have a pretty solid game.
Yeah, and the other part that can remedy a lot of this is the offense to go out and put up 10 runs. Offense puts up 10 runs. Kershaw can still pitch relatively well, but they can maybe lengthen the leash a little bit for him to go a little bit longer, even if he's not, quite dominating. But, even if he's given up, let's just say 3 or 4 runs, they can still try to get him into the 6th, maybe into the 7th, if he's good on pitch count. And then you don't have to worry about who pitches the last couple innings, because, you have a big enough lead to where you feel comfortable anyways. So that's the other big part of this is the offense. And, like I said, with Lauer, his fastball is down a little bit from before. Now they got Miley, who's a guy that doesn't throw hard, makes his stuff around. If they can force him to throw, to stay in the strike zone, which is something the Dodgers do pretty well, and stay back on some of the stuff that he throws them, they can for sure get him out early again. He's, at the end of the day, he's Wade Miley. He's not, he has had success in spurts. He's in one of those spurts right now to start this season, but it's not by any means anything that's sustainable for more than what it is spurts.
I wonder if Scott Van Slyke is available. He hit Wade Miley well, didn't he? Yeah. I seem to remember from Miley's time with the D-backs, I guess. I'm just pulling up Van Slyke's career numbers. Let's see. Miley. Yeah, about a 444, 8 for 18 with 5 home runs and 3 doubles against Wade Miley. So that's a 1968 OPS. So Scott Van Slyke, I know he's on Twitter. So maybe, I don't know whose spot he'd take on the roster.
Trace
all right. Sorry, Trace Thompson. Man, that would be a slap in the, especially because Van Slyke has been advocating on Twitter for Trace to get more at bats. So that would be a real twist of fate if Trace lost his roster spot to Scott Van Slyke at this point. But that's probably not likely. Trace probably will be in the starting lineup, and because it is a lefty on the mound. So maybe today is the day that Trace Thompson breaks out.
We're waiting. That's all we can do.
Stranger things have happened, maybe. So, I think that's it for today. You got anything else, Vince?
I got nothing else. I'm glad to be back in California and glad to be able to watch Dodger games again, and glad we're back together. So everything's good, right?
Yeah, it's nice doing a podcast with both of us in our actual recording habitats, and always good to see your face and talk Dodgers with you. Always good to talk Dodgers with our listeners. We really appreciate all of you, especially our everydayers. If you're not an everydayer, it's a real easy club to join. All you do is watch or listen every day. And then you can tell us, hey, I'm an everydayer. And we'll say, hey, thanks, because that's how we are. If you have friends or family who love the Dodgers like you do, please tell them about the show. Maybe they'll become everydayers too. Remember, if you can't watch today's game on TV, you can always listen to it, the live hometown broadcast, by listening to it on SiriusXM channel 178 or the SXM app. Search for Dodgers, and you can always catch this podcast on the SXM app by searching for Locked On Dodgers. We are what do I got? You can find us on Instagram and on Twitter at Locked On Dodgers. Vince is on Twitter at VinceSince91. I'm on Twitter at Snydog, and the DMs are open in all of those places. Our email address is lockedondodgers@gmail.com. And our phone number for voicemails or text messages is 323-863-LOCK-5625. We are here every weekday morning, and we hope you'll be here with us. When you get in your car or sit on your couch, tell your smart device to play podcast Locked On Dodgers. And remember, you don't have to agree. You just have to listen. We'll talk to you tomorrow.
Have a good one.